Hey! You guys lost? Does one of you make video games, perhaps? Well, do you want to know how you can make your player feel like this in a video game? Really? Did you understand anything I said? No, never mind. I'll go find some... What? What are you doing? What the... Huh. Looks like I was the lost one all along. Hi, my name is Crab, and today I will show you one simple trick to grow your level design expertise, doctors hate 'em, which will not only help your players in case they get lost, but also help guide your players to prevent them from getting lost in the first place. Because even though it can be their own fault, it's on you to help them get out of these situations. And then I'll explain why sometimes it's better to do nothing and let them be lost. Wait, what? Well, let's not waste any more time and look at the solution to our first two problems. Designing cognitive maps. Cognitive maps are the maps that we create in our head of our surroundings. You will find an example of a cognitive map in your head right now if you just think of going shopping to your favorite store. Everyone builds different cognitive maps in their mind, because we all experience the world around us in unique ways. A level designer's job is to make sure that all players have an easy time creating their map in their mind. If you ever get lost, that means that either your cognitive map does not align with the space you're navigating, or you cannot draw a path from here to your destination, or that you are in a still undocumented area without a point of reference to a familiar area. And the bigger your world, the easier it is to get lost. So to demonstrate the effectiveness of designing with the creation of cognitive maps in mind, and the higher level guidance that is provided with that design thinking, I want to take a look at my favorite open world. The world of Breath of the Wild. I choose Breath of the Wild because it is still one of the very few games to make great use of their open world. A lot of these games nowadays still boil down to following a linear story and questline within a giant world where you'll rarely find a strong incentive to explore, other than just for the sake of 100%ing the game. You are never required, nor extrinsically motivated to leave the main mission path, because the main questline already feeds you everything you need to easily complete all the quests when you get to them. In Breath of the Wild, any shrine you complete, any puzzle you solve, and any fight you take helps you gear up towards the big face-off with Calamity Ganon in Hyrule Castle. This is how you design an open world game, because it ensures that no matter where you go, it's the right place to be. I know that this subject has been covered by lots of YouTubers before, who have all gone into way more detail about open world game design than I want to in this video. So if you want to know more about that, I recommend you watch the Rasputin and the Adam Millard videos, who, as I've just finished writing this, have both uploaded videos on games that make you feel lost. I, for one, will focus solely on the level design aspect of guiding the player through the open world and making them feel lost, because you might be surprised by how similar most Breath of the Wild playthroughs were, and not by coincidence. When designing an open world, you want to design around the player's intrinsic wish to explore, because it ensures that your players will stay engaged with your game as long as there's stuff to discover. To understand how to do that, we'll analyze the world of Hyrule, focusing on the 5 most important elements for the creation of cognitive maps: paths, districts, edges, landmarks, and nodes. These elements, as well as my understanding of cognitive maps, stem from this GDC talk by Nicolas Oasian, which you can find in the description below, in case you want to learn more about cognitive maps. When you first leave the cave you wake up in, 4 landmarks will instantly catch your eyes. Landmarks are memorable features of the level that are either visually prominent or important objects of the narrative. Popular landmarks are towers, mountains, and statues because they can be seen and identified from far away and inform the player at all times where they are in relation to these specific parts of the world. But a fountain, a tavern, or a bridge of historic significance can just as well be important landmarks that help players create a map in their mind. The important thing is that when you're designing landmarks, you should aim for uniqueness so that players do not confuse 2 landmarks, which would scramble their cognitive map. The 4 initially important landmarks in Breath of the Wild are Castle Hyrule, the volcano in the back, the dueling peaks, and the cathedral on the plateau. These are now the landmarks that you orientate yourself around when navigating the tutorial plateau. No matter where you go, you can rely on knowing where you are based on the location of these 4 landmarks, simply because they are displayed so prominently. The tutorial has to be more linear because it needs to properly introduce players to all their abilities while teaching them about the significance of towers and shrines so that players will seek them out during their adventure in Hyrule. At the end of the tutorial, Grandpa reveals that he was actually the king of Hyrule the whole time, and as mentioned earlier, gives you your main quest: destroy Ganon. He advises you to talk to Impa, a cute little grandma that lives in Kakariko village who can help you out with the whole Ganon problem. He also suggests taking the path through the dueling peaks towards Kakariko, but you don't have to follow his orders, you can just curious whatever you want. But will you? Let's say you are a total rebel. You don't care what anyone says and you don't listen to any authority, let alone a monarch. So you choose to head in the complete opposite direction. You likely won't be going far because you'll immediately encounter a tall mountain range with very steep walls in the southwest of the map. We can classify these as edges, just like cliffs, fences, walls, portals, a river, or a sudden change in setting. As you can see, edges are used a lot in level design, and if used correctly, they can be very memorable. You don't want to use too many if you don't want the player to feel boxed in, and the ones you use should be clear and obvious to make it easier for the player to memorize them. So you realize that you don't have the stamina to get over the mountains, and you try your luck in the northwest. There you will encounter more mountains, and later on even freezing temperatures for which you are likely not yet fit enough to survive. Additionally, the position of the 4 main landmarks focuses the interest onto this general area of the map, which is supported by the steep mountain range as this edge pushes players away from it into the easier and quickly navigable flatlands. To the north of the plateau, guardians roam the Hyrule fields, which make them very risky and difficult to navigate. We can label this as a district. A district is an area of your level that is uniquely identifiable through a certain characteristic. It can be an industrial zone in a city, the bathroom in your house, or a forest that you might currently be trying to find your way out of. In most open world games, districts are just different biomes, with different looking fauna and unique terrain characteristics. But districts don't have to be only unique in theme. For example, you could make a district where players need to be more careful and stealthy, and then a district where fighting is encouraged. If you associate different districts with different kinds of challenges, it'll make it even easier for players to tell them apart and integrate them into their mind map because of how they have to adapt their behavior to these districts. In the south, we find a jungle district with a lot of hilly terrain and water, again difficult to navigate and access. So the easiest, quickest and most stress-free ways to reach Kakariko are along the river through the dueling peaks, or along the river past the wetlands. On both routes, the player is guided by a clear path supporting their movement into the direction of Kakariko and allowing them to easily orient themselves at all times. Paths lead players through your world and create connections between important locations. When players are lost and they happen to come across a path, they can assume that whether they go left or right, sooner or later they will arrive at an important location, which gives them a chance to find themselves again and start making some progress. In both cases, the player will pass by and likely take a break at a stable. Here they are taught about horses and how to tame them, allowing players to travel a lot quicker. Additionally, they learn that stables are safe places, available for the player to calm down and prepare for their next adventure. Stables are often found at intersections, or places where players are likely to rejoin a path coming from an adventure in the wild. These are nodes, which are connection points between multiple paths. Nodes can often be seen as a sort of hub for your players, where they can decide what their next journey will be. In those cases, nodes are destinations, so it's important to have players memorize them and firmly integrate them into their cognitive map. To do that, you want to make sure the node is recognizable, that players pass by the same node a bunch of times, and that they end up spending some time there by giving them the opportunity to gear up for their next adventure, for example. But not every node should be. If you have a less attractive node, you can just let it be a normal intersection. These help players further contextualize how far two destinations are apart and how they are connected to the rest of the world. So now you've arrived in Kakariko and met this cute little grandma Impa. Such a cute little grandma, oh my god, just look at her. She's so cute. She tells you that defeating Ganon will be much easier after freeing the 4 divine beasts and marks their locations on your map. Now it's entirely up to you to choose which one to free first, but players seem to have a very heavy preference. Around 80% of them began their adventure by freeing the elephant and with it Mifa. And if you can get 80% of your players to do what you want them to do, that's enough. You will always find annoying little gremlins, like me, who see what you're trying to set up and then purposefully defy it. And even though I like to be an annoying gremlin, I also wanted to free the elephant first. And that's what you as a level designer should strive for. You want the player to think it was their idea to go to Kakariko and free the elephant first. I cover how you should go about achieving this feeling in other games in my previous video, how to make a readable game. So if you want to know more, you know where to find it. Even though the elephant is the closest to Kakariko, the devs still want to make sure you actually go there first, which is why they've created 5 easy exits to the village. Players will likely leave via one of these, because once again, they don't yet have the stamina to get over the mountains, so the valleys are the easier option. The main exit leads to Hatino, a different village that is part of a different quest, which will eventually lead the player back into the Kakariko Valley. The exit towards Mount Laneiru is difficult to navigate due to the narrow pathways and enemy camps. The other 3 exits have a perfect view on the Laneiru Tower, which lures the player in and gets them to the starting point of the very handholdy Divine Beast questline, taking them through a narrow valley along a clear path to ensure that they make it to Zora's domain, from where they will be perfectly guided towards the elephant. The Witness has a similar beginning, without pretty much any handholding. The player comes out of the tunnel and is introduced to the main mechanic of the game, drawing a path from start to end. They can familiarize themselves with this mechanic in the starting area before being allowed to leave and roam the island. They find and solve a bunch of puzzles where they will be rewarded with a strange beam pointing to the top of this mountain. Mysterious, but no time to explain. You need to roam the island and solve puzzles. In every unique district, you will encounter a new puzzle gimmick which you will have to learn to understand and ultimately master, all through trial and error. What makes The Witness so impressive is the complete lack of handholding and full dedication to the figure-it-out mentality. Players are taught immediately that nothing and no one will assist them in any way, so the only way to progress is to go and figure it out yourself. If you don't understand a part of a puzzle, leave it be and find the district that lets you master this gimmick. Then, when you return to this puzzle, you will feel like you've come this much closer to figuring out this mysterious island, like a small character arc has come to an end. The combination of a unique gimmick/player behavior and theming makes every district very special and therefore very memorable. Add to that all the unique landmarks and the scarce use of paths and nodes, making this island so easy to map out and navigate. This kind of design makes your world so much more memorable, which allows you to spend way less of your playtime looking at an overhead map. In my playthroughs of Breath of the Wild, I only ever really used the map when I wanted to see what a new tower uncovered, when I wanted to fast travel to a shrine, or when I wanted to find Korok seeds, like this one. Nicholas mentions in his talk that minimaps and map menus weaken our ability to form a cognitive map. And I think that the more memorable your map is, the less you will rely on those tools even if they are at your disposal. This works especially well in Breath of the Wild because players have to venture through the world blind to get access to the overhead map of a region, which teaches them to put more emphasis on building a stellar cognitive map and only really use the overhead map as an assistance. In contrast to that, I want to show you a world that I spent a similar amount of time in, the world of Just Cause 3. And I can only tell you 3 things about that open world. 1, there's a big ocean, which is kind of a no-no zone. 2, there's a big mountain, which is a hell yeah woohoo zone. And 3, there are lots of villages and outposts, which are boom boom zones. And I couldn't even tell you where these villages are. I know there's a bigger city here, and there's probably a village around here, but that's it. Because of the lack of unique districts and landmarks, except for the mountain and the city, and because of the abundance of paths that you will rarely use because you can do this the entire game, the player will not build a very strong cognitive map, and they will spend a lot of time looking at this screen to figure out where to go and what to blow up next. Players will actually often find themselves lost in Just Cause 3, but they will rarely indulge in that feeling because they can solve the issue by pressing tab at any point in the game. Like I mentioned earlier, players feel lost when their surroundings do not match with their cognitive map, when there is no map of their current location and no point of reference to a familiar location, or when they cannot create a path in their mind from here to their destination. That last point especially is an amazing motivator for exploration. If the player knows what their destination is, but they don't quite know how to get there, they will still try to make it over there and potentially discover a bunch of cool stuff along the way. In Just Cause 3, I would just look at the map, and instead of exploring and finding that cool stuff along the way, I'd follow the game's built-in pathfinder to my destination and complete the objective. The solution here is to use the tools that I mentioned to build memorable maps, so that players have an easy time building their cognitive maps, which will lead to a more rewarding experience when roaming the open world. Use landmarks and nodes to lure players into unknown territory, use edges to push them into your desired direction, and provide paths connecting the different destinations, so that players have an easier time staying on track and remembering how to get from A to B. The paths make the player feel more comfortable and might enable them to check out something off track because they know how to easily get back on track again. For districts, you'd want to use them like edges, but also to let players know where they are on a more global scale and how to think about engaging with the world in their current location. And I'm not saying overhead maps are bad or that open world games shouldn't have them. They're useful. I mean, the world of Just Cause 3 is very, very big. You can fit at least 50 football fields in here. American or European football fields. Fuck it, even Australian football fields, whatever. The point is, somehow you need to be able to keep track of all this information, which is what the map is for. I just feel like they should be an assistant, not the main way of finding your path through the world, because that robs the player of the exploration reward. So we can use that lost feeling to get the player to explore and discover, but what else can we use it for? We can also make players crap their little diapers like babies because they're so scared. The reason why so many games are so handholdy nowadays is because they don't want players to feel overwhelmed or scared in case they get lost. But think of the best horror games or horror moments in games, and you'll find that disorientation plays a big role in making players soil their freaking baby diapers. Not for me though, because I'm an adult man, and video games don't scare me. The Silent Hill games are known for their eerie and scary atmosphere, and also for their fog. Not only are players unsure what hides in here, but it's also difficult for them to remember different parts of the level and to find out where exactly they are right now. That's why the devs were so kind and gave them an overhead map, otherwise the game might have been almost impossible to beat. A similar strategy is used in Resident Evil 8, when the player goes to visit the House Beneviento, or the Puppet House. To get there, players will take a rather unremarkable path through a foggy forest before taking an elevator and finally arriving at the house, which already makes them alert and builds up tension before they even enter this haunted house. So we can make players feel scared by making them feel lost, which is achieved through confusion, which we create by making it difficult for players to fully figure out where they are. Capiche? You don't necessarily need to work with low visibility effects like fog or darkness to achieve this, although they certainly help. Lethal Company, in addition to not providing any explanation about the mechanics or the monsters, oh no, gives players a new randomized facility layout with every mission, using the same set of rooms. Most of these rooms look very unremarkable and often very similar, which makes it difficult for players to find notable landmarks and areas to integrate into and base their cognitive map on. It's entirely on you to remember how to get out of here, and if you don't, or you think you do, but it turns out you've misremembered, it's scary. Like, really scary. Okay, maybe video games might scare me as well. No other type of game benefits as much from the feeling of being lost as exploration and horror games do. So even though I've hopefully taught you in my last 2 videos how to guide players and prevent them from getting lost, I will also say that you should sometimes just ignore all of that, depending on what type of game you're making. Now that you know how to keep players from getting lost, you also know how to try and make players feel lost on purpose, to encourage them to explore. Finding a Korok seed while trying to find your way towards a shrine. Finding your way out of the facility alive, with or without loot, or finally finding the solution to a puzzle because you now understand all the elements of it. Those are some of the incomparably rewarding experiences which have all been set up and amplified by making the player feel lost. So use it wisely, to make your game a very memorable experience. I want to shout out Nicolas Oasian, whose GDC Talk was the main inspiration behind this video, and because all of game analysis and design YouTube seems to be obsessed with lost videos right now, I've linked a playlist of some of my favorite videos in the description below, in case you want to learn more about the general game and systems design of these games. Also, thanks to my sister for helping me out with the intro. You're a real one. I also want to shout out Sesam öffne dich. You've won the vote for favorite subscriber, unanimously. So, congratulations! Here's a little star, just for you. Do with it whatever you want. If anyone can count how many times I said cognitive maps in this video, that would be nice, because I completely lost count of it. And while you're busy doing that, I'm gonna try and find that guy in the forest. I feel like he's not making any progress, so I gotta go help him. Alright, see y'all. Oh, and take care.